Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Zoe Knows Sports Show, where you know Zoe knows. Hi, I'm your host, Alonzo Jones. You can call me Zoe. Today we will be doing a comprehensive breakdown of the top 10 teams in the AP Coaches Poll. As you all do know, that Coaches Poll did come out this morning on Sunday. I have questions about a few of these picks and selections, but I'm not on the committee, so I guess I can't say too much, but we all know that Zoe knows. So we'll start from the top and take it all the way down to number 1. Now, what I will tell you is at our top 10 spot, we've got Notre Dame. Now, historically, the Fighting Irish typically do get a little favoritism. I don't know if it's because of the tradition, because of the movie Rudy. Who knows? Rudy wasn't that good. It was okay, but it wasn't that good in my opinion. Now, I look at their schedule here, and I see they've got a game against Coach Charlie Strong, who actually just left our Louisville Cardinals a few years ago here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I am stationed. Now, that's at Texas. I honestly think this could be dubbed as the graveyard game because Brian Kelly, Charlie Strong, both of you guys, great coaches. However, I'm not sure who's going to be with their date longer. Will it be Charlie with Texas or Brian with Notre Dame? Now, that's going to be a tough game. I think Tyrone Swope's coming back for Texas. They probably will end up beating Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame's going to be that great this year. They've got a 2 QB system that they may be implementing. Not quite positive. There are 2 QBs who they've got. They've got Deshaun Kaiser, who filled in sparingly last year for Malik Zaire. He broke his ankle. Now, Malik Zaire, I like him as a quarterback. He's a great athlete. I think he'd do a lot more maybe at wide receiver for them just because you like to think that he can still play the position of quarterback. However, missing so much time in a position that requires you to be on the field because – of course, we all know that to win championships, you got to have a quarterback in college who can lead your team. So I'm not sure how that's going to go with them. Notre Dame, they've got a veteran offensive line. They've got defense. They've got Niles Morgan as well as James Anwalu at linebacker. They've got a safety coming back, Drew Tranquil. Now, as some of you all may know, Fighting Irish fans, I watched that game last year when they did play Georgia Tech, I want to say. Drew Tranquil breaks up a pass, and he actually falls down on a celebration and tears his ACL. Very unfortunate. Sorry for him. But he'll be coming back to help them out in the secondary. Now, I see they've got a few games here against Stanford and Miami in late October. Stanford, I feel like that's a very winnable game for them because Christian McCaffrey, great player, but I just don't think he can carry that ball club over the top. Miami, they've got Joseph Yearby as well as Mark, I can't think of the last name. They've got a 2-headed running back system. I think they'll actually lose that game at home because Miami's got a lot of talent this year with Brad Kaya as their quarterback. That's Felicia's son on Friday, if you didn't know. But they've got that loss. Also, they have to play at USC the last game of the season. I really don't see Notre Dame winning those 2 games simply because of the talent level. And I just don't feel like Notre Dame has been able to get that talent back in there over the last few years. Stephon Tuitt, I don't think Brian Kelly recruited him. He may have. He's not there anymore. They're at defensive end. So they've got to really show me something early on for me to actually believe in them. But I predict they'll go probably 9-3. Now, we move on to our number 9 team. That's Tennessee. Now, I really like Tennessee this year for this season overall. I've got them. I predicted them to possibly go 12-0 or 11-1, just depending on how they play. If you look at last year, they actually lost 4 games by single digits, which they were ahead of 2 playoff teams who competed in the college football playoff in 2016, Alabama and Oklahoma. They led both of those teams in the fourth quarter. You've got 17 returning starters, 11 seniors, not a lot, but you've got experience because you've got those starters coming back. Quarterback Josh Dobbs, he'll be a senior. I think he's a proven person on the field. I don't hear about him getting in trouble off the field. However, I do think he's somebody who's going to have to take that next step in order for Tennessee to take a next step as a program. Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara, I refer to them as cream soda. You've got Hurd, he's a bit of a bruiser, 6'4", 250 pounds. He can give you a little, grind you like a bulldozer. But then you've got Kamara, he's like a little sports car out there. He can make all the right turns. They got that BMW Vision 100 next 100 years. I like Kamara. He'd be the cream, Jalen be the soda. He's the carbonation. He's going to bring the punch. Now, on defense, we've got Derek Barnett as well as Jalen Reeves-Maben and Cameron Sutton in the secondary. I do think Tennessee's got a pretty favorable schedule. However, they've got a little bit of a trash can in the middle of the schedule. They have to go to Georgia, to Texas A&M, then they get Alabama at home. Now, I do believe they can win that Alabama game at home. However, at Georgia with a new Kirby Smart, new head coach under Kirby Smart, as well as you've still got Sonny Michel, Nick Chubb, that may be a tough game. I think they'll win it. At Texas A&M can be tough because you don't know which Trevor Knight you're going to get. If he were Forrest Gump's chocolate, he'd be somewhere in the box. Because when he comes to play, he's a great quarterback. However, when he doesn't, he's bad. So I predict them possibly going either 12-0 or 11-1, depending on which one of those games they do lose in the middle of the season, either at Georgia, at Texas A&M, or Alabama at home. But I think the Vols will be pretty good this year just because of the experience. Now, also, we can talk about our number 8 team in the top 10. That be our Stanford Cardinal. Now, they will be a pretty good team. I predict them going 9-3. They've got a quarterback, Keller Christ. Never really heard of him. I know about Kevin Hogan. They've got a pretty good quarterback tree the last few years with Stanford's Andrew Luck, currently the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. He played last night, looked pretty good. And also Kevin Hogan, who was a fifth-year senior, great leadership. Now, I'm not sure how that'll translate for Chris. Don't really know him, but we'll just have to see. Their Heisman horse, of course, is Christian McCaffrey. He can do everything. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can tote the rock. He can do everything you need him to do. However, will Christian McCaffrey be able to take his team to that next step? Because last year, they were in the playoff discussion with 2 losses. However, let's be serious, folks. 2 losses, it's pretty hard to put a team in a playoff. And you've got a lot of 1-loss teams and a pretty good 2-loss team. Their O-line's always okay. You know, I don't think that's too much of a concern for a team that's not in the Pac-12. It doesn't have to play a Stanford because the athletes in the SEC, Alabama, Tennessee, programs like Florida, they've got the athletes and the big men to match up with that offensive line. So on a national scale, I don't think that'll make a big of a difference. New on defense, Solomon Thomas. I like him at DN. They've got a new defense. I really like Solomon Thomas. I think he's going to have to definitely carry that defense. Now, they've got a game against USC. I think they'll lose that. They've got to play Adoree Jackson, which I think he's fresh produce. If he were a banana, he'd be pretty ripe. He's a very athletic individual. Alabama may have problems with him week 1. Also, at UCLA, at Washington, those would be 2 tough games. I like Jake Browning at Washington as a quarterback. Pretty good with the ball. He'll be a sophomore this year. Josh Rosen, he'll be a sophomore as well, UCLA's quarterback. Those would be 2 tough games for him. Also, I think they will lose at Notre Dame. That'll be a cold game in South Bend. When you go from Cali all the way to Indiana and you got to come face this brick cold, it's not as easy as you think to play in that. Trust me, I do know. Fried rice and duck sauce. They get up in Oregon. Pharaoh Brown is back. Mr. Brown's back in town. Roy Diehard Freeman, I don't know how long he's been in Oregon, but I know since he's been there, he's been a great running back for them. I think they will have problems. They've got a senior transfer, Dakota Prukup from Montana State. We'll see how he plays with Oregon. They're like the new John Calipari of the Pac-10. So we'll definitely see how Stanford does, but I think they'll end up being 9-3. Now also, we'll go to our number 7 team, the Michigan Wolverines. Coach Harbaugh's boys. Okay. Now, I never really liked Michigan's schedule because it's kind of like Vacation Cupcake City, okay? They've got Hawaii, UCF, Colorado, Penn State, Wisconsin, at Rutgers, and Illinois. Who did they play again in the first 6 games? I don't know. Somebody tell me, please, because I don't know. They've got an outside linebacker, Jabril Peppers, who moves over. I really like Jabril Peppers. I think he's been one of the recruits that's revitalized that Michigan program. He's athletic. He's got enthusiasm, vibrato. He's got everything you do need. A big test for them will be at Michigan State, which I think they'll win that game because there's no Connor Cook. So I do think they'll win at Michigan State. They've got a tough game at Iowa and another tough game at Ohio State to wrap up the season. Now, at Iowa, they've got C.J. Beathard as quarterback. They've got a pretty experienced team, so I'm not sure how they'll do it at Iowa, but I think they can win that game, but I also think they could lose, as well as they've got to play at Ohio State, which I think they can win that game, but also can lose that game. I think Michigan may be 1 year away from being this team that everybody's hyped about. I don't give a care about Jordan on your uniform, Mr. Harbaugh. You got to show me more than that, son. Now, QB John O'Corn, he was the backup to Greg Ward at Houston a few years ago. He got his spot taken. So if you got your spot taken in Houston, I don't know how good you are if you're playing for Michigan, just to be completely honest. But hey, that's me. I'm not sure. Now, I think Michigan will go 11-1. And have a shot to get in that playoff discussion, but I do think they'll lose one of those games at Michigan State, at Iowa, or at Ohio State. Okay, now we do go down to our number 6 team, which is the mighty Buckeyes of Ohio State. They've got Urban Meyer at head coach, of course. He's been successful at every program he's been at. He had back in the Percy Harvin days and Tim Tebow days at Florida, and also with Braxton last year. And I think it was a magnificent coaching effort of him to work with Cardale Jones, and also J.T. Barrett, and also Braxton Miller, and moving him over to wide receiver and revitalizing a football career, which actually was on the way down. But by moving into wide receiver, he actually helped Braxton out, and he's in the NFL right now working at that. So I do like Urban Meyer as a coach. I like J.T. Barrett as a quarterback. They've got the early test at Oklahoma, which I think they'll lose because I just don't know if they have enough to go down there and deal with Samaje Perine. He's a bruiser. And also Baker Mayfield, he's got a little bit of Jowdy football in him. I'm not sure if Ohio State can handle that in Norman with that type of atmosphere so early in the season. They've got no seniors on defense. That's like ribs with no sauce. Defense does win championships, but they've got a lot of redshirt juniors, which is technically seniors in the classroom. So those are, I would call those shelf goods. You know, if you go to your frozen food section, you skip that. Next aisle, you see your canned peas and your canned green beans. So that's what I'd call their defense this year. Then they've got a battle of the lakes at Michigan State, and they got Michigan at home. So is this going to be a siege of Michigan? I do think they'll lose one of those games. Could lose both of them. I think they'll only lose one. I predict them possibly going 10-2. So Ohio State had a pretty good year, but I don't know if they'll make the playoff. I do think Michigan's got a little bit more this year, brings a lot more to the table to be able to compete on that national scale, if that makes sense, from the Big Ten Conference. Now, our number 5 team that I do see, LSU. Sneaky old Les Miles, huh? I do predict them to go 10-2. Speed does kill. They are in the SEC. And they've got a man, Leonard, not yet Fournette. Now, I call him Leonard, not yet Fournette, because you ask every week, when are they going to stop him? Not yet. Leonard, not yet Fournette will get it done. He will treat you like a boy. I know a lot of these college football players these days say, I'm a grown man. But he will treat you like a boy. Trust me. He ran for 200 yards per game. And I want to say the first 4 or 5 games he played last year, I mean, I brought my lady in. We watching him on the TV with Syracuse, and she says, is this guy you're talking about? And all I can say is, that's him. That's him. Okay. Now, they play Wisconsin, first game. I want to say in Green Bay. That's at Lambeau Field. I'm not positive on that. I'm pretty sure they are playing at Lambeau Field. They'll make a dish, a gourmet dish. If you're into gourmet food, you can go eat a little bit of chopped steamed badger because that, I think, will be a blowout. I don't think Wisconsin has near enough athletes to compete with LSU. Near enough athletes to tackle Leonard Fournette. They could get Clay Matthews and the rest of the Packers, and he still might run for 100 yards, to be honest. Also, they've got QB Brandon Harris. I think he grows into a poor man's Woody Dantzler. He's got the talent. He's got everything he needs. I think it's all here, mental. He's got to actually buy into his ability. He throws the football great, not an excellent runner, but he does enough. You could also even call him maybe a discount Deshaun Watson because he's not a Deshaun Watson. There's not many Deshaun Watsons in the country. That's a Heisman finalist. But he can do enough with his legs and on the ground to get you out of bad spots, bad situations, and keep the game flow going for you. They've also got a game against Alabama late in the season. I think they'll win that because they get Alabama at home. They've got to play at Arkansas. They may lose that Arkansas game just because it's right after the Alabama game. You beat Alabama. You're feeling pretty good about yourself. I think by that time they may be about 9-0. So they may be feeling pretty good and get tripped up out there in Fayetteville. Now, they've got Texas A&M the last game of the season. I think they will actually lose that game. It's on Thanksgiving, Burnt Turkey Day. Because, I mean, I mean, obviously, if you lose on Thanksgiving, it's almost like a burnt turkey. It doesn't feel too good. But I think they might lose that game. It's senior night. You got Myles Garrett there on the edge for Texas A&M. I think they'll get pretty busy and possibly trip up LSU, and they'll end up 10-2, but probably will win the West because they beat Alabama. So, yeah, that's my prediction for their season. Now, we go over to Florida State, our mighty Seminoles. Now, Jimbo Fisher, the head coach there, they had a pretty good year last year. Dalvin Cook was hurt most of the year. He will be back in the kitchen, cooking, serving up 90-yard runs. I promise you. He actually comes to Louisville on the 17th of September. I'm trying to get tickets to that game. If you have any, let me know, please. Now, I think there may be some Ali magic that night, but I'm not sure. Lamar Jackson, Agent LJ, as I like to call him, he may come to play and actually trip up Florida State. So that will be a tough game for them early in the season. At Ole Miss, I think they will lose that game. It's the first game of the season. Hugh Freeze has a pretty good program. I think they are established in the SEC and as well as in the nation, and I just feel like Florida State, they're a good team, but they may lose that game early and have to build back up until the Clemson game or the Miami game as well. Sean McGuire at quarterback, bum on the rise is what I call him, or bun on the rise, bum. But yeah, I call him a bum on the rise simply because he's not a bad player, but I remember when Jameis Winston got suspended, he came and had to replace him in that Clemson game, and he played okay. I think I'd say a little less than okay, but I think he'll be a good player for them. Now, also, Boo Boo Wilson. He's that receiver. He's a playmaker for them. Number 3, Boo Boo Wilson. His first name's really Jesus. Now, can he save Florida State this year? I do not know. Now, they've got to play Clemson at home. Now, as I stated, they will lose that early game to Ole Miss. However, I think that Florida State will beat Clemson at home this year. Haunted House. It's the 29th of October. It's a Saturday, close to Halloween. I think they bounce back, jump back in the playoff discussion by beating Clemson handily. Not just beating them, but handily. I'd say they might beat Clemson possibly by 10 points. I'm not seeing Clemson just rolling through everybody in the ACC this year. New look defense, no Jalen Ramsey. Roberto Aguayo, he's gone, but his little brother, Ricky, is going to be kicking this year. So I think they may have a shot because anybody who's related to Roberto Aguayo, they've got to be okay. He's a great kicker. They got to be okay. He's in the NFL right now. Kickers don't just get picked up in the draft like that. Now, I will tell you, Oklahoma Sooners, they're number 3. QB, Baker Mayfield. They've got Clemson the first game of the season. They've got an outstanding quarterback in Greg Ward. James Harden, he can't save you, Houston. I look at the two-piece from Indies. They've got Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon. Great backfield. They were both sharing the load last year, so that should still be pretty evenly flowing. They'll have an even flow for that backfield. They've got home field advantage against Ohio State. They'll win that game, I think. They've got to play at Texas. They are not there yet. I don't think Texas is there yet. I think they will beat Notre Dame, but I just don't think Charlie and the boys are there yet. Fluke win last year down in the Red River rivalry. Fluke win. Mark my words. I think Oklahoma handles business. They've got a linebacker, Jordan Evans. No Eric Stryker. I think he was the heart and soul of that defense. He brought the wood, brought the pain, brought the effort, the intensity, gave the Ray Lewis speeches, all that good stuff. But you can only do so much. And if you're not there on the team anymore, then I'm not sure how much of an impact you can have, which he won't have one because he's not there. But best of luck to Eric Stryker as well in the NFL. Now, that last game of the season, I think they'll win it. Oklahoma State, they get them at home. But the Bedlam game, that's always a shootout. Pistol Pete always brings his gats and his straps. So we'll have to just see how that actually goes. Now, we get down to the nitty-gritty. Our number 2 team, our Clemson Tigers. Hot chili, hot chili. First game they play in the season is at Auburn. Now, that is a win for them, I think, because they're simply too experienced. I think that Clemson will go 11-1. Their quarterback, Deshaun Watson, Heisman finalist. He'll challenge for the Heisman again. I think he'll get more favorable votes just because he was up for it last year. They've got running back Wayne Gallman back. They've got Ben Hogan there. Listen, brother. He's playing linebacker. He's a very good linebacker. I like the fact that he calls his turnovers and he's very rough there in the middle. And as I stated, they've got to go to that haunted house on the 29th of October there in Tallahassee at Florida State. They've got new defensive ends, Klein Farrell and Austin Bryant. Now, over the years, they've had pretty good defensive ends. Vic Beasley, who got picked up by the Falcons, and Shaq Lawson, who just left and signed with the NFL this year. So they pretty much have good defensive ends every year, even back to Daquan Bowers. They've got good, consistent defensive end play, so I don't foresee a major drop-off in that area. But I like Clemson going 11-1, just because they've got a lot of talent coming back and a lot of juice built up for this upcoming season. So I think they'll definitely do pretty well this year. Now, we get down to that team everybody loves to talk about, except myself, because, you know, I like to see a little bit of championships spread out in the SEC, because that is the best conference in football, in my opinion, just because of the athletes. But Alabama, #1 team once again. I think they'll go 10-2. Okay, now, this is a new team. They've got no Derrick Henry. They've got a new QB system, Cooper Bateman or Blake Barnett. I don't know who either of those guys are. It sounds like a law firm, Barnett and Bateman. Bateman or Barnett. It just sounds like a law firm. It doesn't really sound like I'm going to hear about any winners or people who can lead their team to a championship. Now, I look at these running backs. Bo Scarborough, Damian Harris. Damian Harris got some play last year. I like him. He's a quick running back. Bo Scarborough, people have told me things about him. I've watched a few highlights, but he's no Derrick Henry. Let's be for sure about that. He is no Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry, I saw some highlights with the Titans. He looks nice. Nicer than sliced bread. Okay, tight end O.J. Howard. He's going to have to do more in the passing game. He'll have to come down with some balls to help those young quarterbacks out. Bateman or Barnett, whoever they are, the law firm. Also on defense, they've still got a defensive end, Deshaun Hand. He'll be a sophomore, and this is led by senior defensive end Jonathan Allen. Great player. Reuben Foster. He's the guy that I expect to take another step this year. I actually saw him a couple years ago, the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game in high school. And when I tell you, this man brings the boom. He brings the boom. I like Reuben Foster, but he's got to show me a little bit this year and step up into that role that Alabama needs him to play at linebacker, losing a guy like Reggie Ragland. At DB, Eddie Jackson, Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick had the big game last year against Texas A&M where he took the 3-piece back to the crib. So I do think that he'll help them out in the secondary. Eddie Jackson, I've always liked him. I look at their schedule. Pretty favorable. They've got USC first game in Dallas. I've got my boss. He's going down there to that game. Enjoy that, Ray. At Mississippi, I think they will win that game. I don't see them losing 3 years in a row to Mississippi, as well as twice in a row to Chad Kelly. Ugh. And also, they've got a tough game at Tennessee on the 15th. Now, that game right there is a big game for Tennessee because there is a lot of hype surrounding that program this year. I do think that they will lose at Tennessee just because they'll be coming off a tough road game at Arkansas. Arkansas will be juiced up for that. They gave them a pretty tough game a few years ago on the road. So I do think they will lose at Tennessee. They'll beat Texas A&M that next week, and then you got to turn right back around and play at LSU. Leonard Fournette, you will not stop that man 2 years in a row, Alabama. Are you crazy? Zoe knows you're crazy. Because Leonard Fournette, I think he's got a lot more to prove. He wants to show sustained progress throughout the season. He wants to leave it in the pot a little longer. Let it cook. Let a whole season cook so he can take home one of those awards. I do think LSU will definitely handle Alabama at home. But, yeah, the tiebreaker would actually go to LSU because poor old Alabama will end up losing that game, which would be the tiebreaker. So I do predict that Tennessee and LSU will play in that SEC championship, but we will have to see how the season plays out. Now that's our top 10 teams that we've went over. Next show, we will go over the best of the rest, top 25 contenders, people who can possibly affect the college football playoff. Contenders within that realm. Just be some basic college football playoff cooler talk. Our unofficial sponsor, Indy's Chicken, our 3-piece dinner box of questions, okay? Now, I've got a couple questions that were sent in. You can send those in at zonosports@gmail.com is where you can send those questions if you do want to be featured in an episode for this college football talk that we are building up until we get to kickoff, which will be September 1st on a Thursday. Our first official Saturday is the 3rd, of course. Now, I've got a question from Trinston Hooks, he asked me, how will UGA do this year? Well, Trinston, I will tell you this, sir. UGA, good team. They've got a new head coach in Kirby Smart. He's a great motivator. He's a great coach. He was at Alabama. I do like Kirby Smart. I'm sure he's a great defensive mind. Now, the one thing I will say, though, Georgia, they lost Leonard Floyd. They lost a Nick Chubb last year midseason to Tennessee with a non-contact knee injury. Very gruesome. I hope Chubb comes back. Georgia's got to show that they can play and sustain a full season and not just do good the first 2 weeks and then get tripped up that third week, and then it just drops anticipation the rest of the year for Georgia fans. You wanted Mark Richt out of there because 10 wins was just not good enough, but I do think UGA will show some improvement this year from last year because they get Nick Chubb back. However, he needs to be healthy. He needs to be a healthy Nick Chubb, the same Chubb we saw that can run through this and that, the one that was backing up Todd Gurley. We need to see that Nick Chubb, not a guy that comes back and he goes from a Benz to a station wagon. We don't want the station wagon Nick Chubb, so definitely hope he gets well. Also, that is a question from Marcus Gallagher. He also asked me, will UGA take the SEC title as a sleeper team? Honestly, I don't see UGA taking them as a sleeper team. I don't see UGA taking the SEC title as a sleeper team. You got to think about all the good teams in the SEC, Marcus. Come on, man. They got LSU, Alabama. You've got Tennessee. Not to mention you've got Florida. Antonio Callaway, he's still suspended. They've lost Treon Harris. Will Greer's no longer there. However, that's a good team still. So I honestly don't think Georgia has an opportunity this year just because you've got the new coaching change. He's got to get his players in there. Give Coach Smart some time. Get you guys back on track. I think 2017 could be a rebuilding year for Georgia. This year, he's got to work with what he's got. I'm not saying there's not any talent down there, but just not enough to beat the likes of Tennessee, LSU, Alabama, if that makes sense. But good question. Thank you, sir. And also to answer your second question, Marcus, is this the year Oregon takes the power back from the Pac-12? Honestly, I do not think so. I do think Stanford is the cream of the crop in that conference, just with McCaffrey and that offensive line and that defense, that no-name defense. I do think Stanford's the creme de la creme. Now, Oregon, they've always been a good team. I do think they need to veer away from the transfer quarterback thing they tried last year with Vernon Adams. It worked out, but it didn't work out kind of because he got hurt in midseason. But I do think that they need to work away from that. I think they can. Oregon, I do think they got a few things they need to shore up on their offensive side of the ball, and as well as defensive especially. They can't keep giving up so many points because this is not the Darren Thomas, LaMichael James, Kenyon Barner days. This is not those days. So they definitely have to shore up that defense because they can't score the 60 points like they used to. That's from what I've seen. They just don't have that ability this year. And I've never seen this Prukop guy play. Who is Prukop from Montana State? I'm not sure. But hey, that's So Knows Sports. Those were our three-piece dinner box questions by our unofficial sponsor, Indy's Chicken of the Day. Every show will be done Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Please tune in, watch me, check me out, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that because everybody knows Zoe knows. Hey, definitely keep in touch with us. Give us some feedback. We'd love to give you feedback. Your host, Alonzo Jones. Thank you for watching, and you all have a great day. Enjoy the season. I'll be talking to you soon. All right.